What is your fake it till you make it story? My piece of shit druggy brother-in-law used to lie and said he had heavy equipment operator experience. He'd get the job and get fired in a day or two, but pick up something small. Did that 15 or 20 times and kept moving around until he learned enough to not get fired. I know how to drive bulldozer. Then what are you doing in my house in the bulldozer? I drove it here, didn't I? I do not, however, know how to steer bulldozer. I taught a class on a specialty software program. I was learning the software myself, and I was literally one class ahead of the people I was teaching. Your job is teaching the program, and that's what you did. You took in the information and presented it in a way that other people could take in. Until that one snarky ass student who knows everything starts questioning you on things that are chapters away. The rest of the class will get to that soon. You are more than welcome to work ahead if you would like. But understand that all questions about future assignments should be held until the rest of the class gets to those assignments, so we all can look at them together. I had this file thing in elementary school, where you have to put all your worksheets in a folder and my teacher will check it at the end of the year. Well, I did not do it, and convinced her that I handed in, but she lost it. She said she will get back to me, and I'm still waiting. What's the chance that she saw through your bullshit, but couldn't be bothered to deal with it? I mean, who the hell wants to mark a whole year's worth of worksheets right before the summer holidays? This is probably why a good number of fake it till you make it scenarios work. Some people see through the facade, but can't be bothered to deal with it, because it would be too much trouble. Your C is leaking, bro. Oh snap. I was desperate for a job several years back, so I wrote up this resume that was utter horseshit on a whim. Granted, some of it was legit, but a good 80% was me bullshitting. Amazingly enough, I got a call for an interview, and by some miracle they ended up hiring me, and I worked for the place for 7 years before something I was actually qualified for opened up at another workplace. That bullshit resume saved me from ruin though, so I always will look back in that crazy situation fondly. What was the job you had for 7 years? It was a job as a programmer for this company that programs home automation touchscreens. TBH, I would never have lasted at that job were it not for this guy that had been there 4 years, and he really took me under his wing. So what's the pair like in your new field of studying fapping? Lol, nowadays I'm an owner operator. I run hazmat materials from Georgia to Miami, semicolon. Last weekend I was at a wedding dance and they played the jit up. No one knew the dance, including myself. But liquid encouragement kicked in, and I lead the entire wedding dance, 50 plus people, in a dance that I completely made up on the spot. Everyone was so impressed after that I knew all of the moves, that I didn't tell anyone any different. I hope some of those people are teaching others your made up dance. It's already in Fortnite. Better so quickly. My business started by me just saying yes, I can do that. I can supply that for you. I had no idea that they would be willing to hear me out. 5 years later, and I'm now supplying desks and office equipment to over 120 offices in London. You really can go far if you just say yes. You really can go far if you just say yes. Well, yeah, the hard part is not saying yes. It's actually following through, mayo. Yes, we can. Bob the Builder. I dropped out of high school in 10th grade. I hated school with a passion. I started working retail and found I really liked managing projects and eventually people. I ended up leaving retail for a call center job in a fairly large company. Within 4 years I was running a marketing division. I had no clue what marketing was or anything. I'm just good at getting people to trust me, and I'm very creative. I got bored there and somehow got myself into another marketing role at an even bigger company. 5 years later I'm the CMO. I still really don't know shit about marketing. I literally faked it till I made it. I'm very good at what I do. Judging by your story, you know exactly what marketing is. What in the world of all fucks could require a perineum to be modeled/photographed? Hey, don't kink shame. During college, I worked part-time as a deli clerk in a grocery store. I had zero experience with deli items, didn't know head cheese from salami, or provolone from Munster. So, I'd explain to customers that I was new, and ask them to point to items in the case that they wanted, and what the sign indicated for the price per pound. They always seemed happy to help out, especially when I gave them free samples from the slicing machine. Hey, this kid has been new for over 10 years now. Sounds like a lot of bologna, if you ask me. I started at a big ol' multinational in retail as a college dropout. I started at the lowest rung of customer service in a store. Now retail has lots and lots of staff turnover, and a multinational has a shitton of rules, or you'd expect them to have. Also, I'm not the dumbest around. Never mind the college dropout, that's another story. And well, to be fair, not everyone in retail is super smart. So there was a consistent lack of management, or they didn't care, and all the rules and regulations had gaps in them. So people start asking questions. How do I solve this? What should I do next? Etc. Nobody had an answer to these questions. So I started answering them using common sense or what I'd think should work. Just filling the gaps, which probably made me look a lot smarter than I am. Just faking that I knew what I was doing. So I started climbing the ladders, and I'm now the senior finance and operations director for a store with a gross turnover of over 160 million euro. However, cracks are starting to show. The company got a lot more serious, and I'm surrounded by smart people with high degrees, where I can't bluff my way through problems and meetings as easily. So, I'm thinking of taking a step back and relaxing a bit more on lower position. I was a bit happier then, and had way less stress and way less hours. TLDR. Faking works until it doesn't. You don't have to take a lower position necessarily. See if the company can send you to some professional development workshops, or even take a community college course on some of the stuff you don't feel strongly about. Imposter syndrome can run strong for a lot of working professionals. Take a course or two and hopefully it will help to bridge some of those gaps. That's a great idea. If you ignore this bit, I was a bit happier then, and had way less stress and way less hours. Somehow I was so focused on the first part one totally ignored the second. Thanks for pointing it out. I still think, if he wasn't still faking it, he'd solve some of the stress issues, but it's his life and his decision. My entire professional career, I played with computers growing up insofar as I knew how to turn one on, download a game, and play them very well. I knew next to nothing about building them, or troubleshooting them, usually depending on my friends to help. When my second-hand PC threw a shit fit, cut to me, fresh out of college with a waste of paper degree looking for a job. I get hired by a mid contractor, cause I knew a gal that knew a guy, with the understanding I needed to know the basics. I didn't know shit. I made it up as I went along, googling the living shit out everything. That was 10 years ago. I'm now a systems administrator. Still googling the living shit out of everything. Right. I felt like I was reading my life story there. Absolutely. Bad part is, I've become so accustomed to just working that way, that it's actually genuinely hard for me to commit shit to memory. Why bother, when I can find the answer in seconds using the internet? A lot of successful people are just people who know how to find the answer. Exactly, becoming proficient at researching and knowing what to research is a skill in its own right. Social anxiety. I was always the quiet guy up until a few years ago. I decided I was tired of not having friends and I started faking confidence and talking to everyone. In the beginning I was dying inside and felt like I was walking on glass. Now I don't know when to shut up and can talk to just about anyone. Sleeping. I fake trying to do it till I'm surprised by the real thing. Cries in insomnia. Not even going to lie, I used to trace other people's art so often as a young artist, like 8 to 10, but now, I have that guidance of technique with me when I create my own pieces. Tracing to learn art isn't bad, as long as you don't keep doing it later. Was told that, in order to get sober I needed to find a church, and start going regularly. I picked a church, went to every service, sat in the front row, and sang along with all the hymns. After about 2 months of regular attendance, the priest asked if I wanted to take over the Sunday school class. I politely declined. I managed to convince a priest I was Christian enough to take over a Sunday school class, but it was still more than another year until I could stay sober without church. Was told that, in order to get sober I needed to find a church and start going regularly. How on earth does this make any sense? Glad you got sober though. If everything made sense then getting/staying sober wouldn't have been such a struggle. Close bracket. A while ago I decided to stop complaining about environmental destruction, climate change, etc. and act. So I started planting trees. Keep in mind I had no training in this. I never even gardened before. I considered myself a brown thumb. I researched how to do it, and it seemed pretty easy, but everything died. I'd plant a tree exactly how they said, but it wouldn't survive. I had to baby them so much, just to get them through their first year, and maybe half would make it. But I just kept planting and faking I knew what I was doing. Then I came across Stuff by Drive, learning on soil science, and it kind of changed everything for me. It made a whole lot of sense. Ecosystems transition from deadland, to weed pit, to grassland, to brushland to forest. As they do, the soil microbiology changes from dead soil to bacterial dominated soil, to fungal dominated soil. So the correct way to plant trees is actually to transition the soil to forest soil as fast as possible. Nature takes thousands of years of weeds dying, and then grasses dying, and soil life building and building, to a small woody shrub, which then eventually dies, and now it changes. Now everything changes. Woody material on the ground means fungus can move in. It's game over at this point, and you will transition to a forest now. So the correct way to plant a tree is to speed yourself to this point by dropping wood chips on the ground and letting the soil chemistry change. After a few months, or even better, a year, now plant your trees into the environment they want to live in. Well, that changed everything, and now I go around planting mini starting forests everywhere on my island, in wild places, abandoned lots, etc. I've seen little pockets of life I've planted turn from a few trees to a small thicket. At this point, it's unstoppable and the land heals. It's an incredibly rewarding hobby, but one you must take very seriously. Anytime you plant something, you set in motion wheels of change. So you must know what you are planting. For this reason I stick to local native trees, shrubs, herbs, flowers, things that exist all around me. That's good for many reasons, the least of which isn't free genetic material, seeds, to make this hobby 100% free. What is really rewarding though is driving to work and seeing a bird perched on an apple tree that I planted, in a cluster of life with bees buzzing around the apple, haskap and lovage and borage and strawberries and asparagus, clover, fruit tree guild, looking and seeing apple saplings bursting up through the sweet sicely. The ecosystem has its foothold in now, and will replicate itself, sequestering carbon and healing the soil long after I'm gone. So I started as someone who considered themselves a brown thumb, and with a little action and knowledge seeking, I now have pockets of life all around my community that are expanding and growing, that I was the catalyst for creating. That's a legacy right there, and that's how we reverse climate change and give our children a world worth living in. If I'm having trouble with just one tree, should I lay down wood chips ahead of time and let them rot for a year, like a 10-foot circle or something? When I was younger, I used to randomly apply for jobs out of curiosity, worked at a ton of places, junkyard, machine shop, security at a pawn store, etc. Well, one job I applied for was an analytical position at a small insurance company. I have absolutely zero experience in any office setting, except a call center, and was not qualified for the job at all. My resume was 100% lies. I even made up the name of the college. Well, they hired me. The place was so disorganized that I essentially just kind of talked my way into it. The people interviewing me didn't even know what position it was for. They paid me $60,000 a year, 3 times what I had ever made. I was 19 and absolutely rolling in money. I even had a little office. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing, so I just kind of flew under the radar. My parents thought it was hilarious. I was literally making as much money as my dad, who was a metallurgical engineer. Unfortunately it didn't last long. A larger company bought us out, mined the company, and fired everyone. I stole a couple laptops on my way out. One of the guys I worked with talked someone into giving him one of the company cars, a super nice BMW. Lol, I stole a couple laptops on my way out. Love how you put that in there so casually. I'm an artist who works in the film industry. Some years ago my wife got pregnant, purposefully, and I had to try to find a way to make more reliable income while she was on mat leave and for the foreseeable future. As we knew we weren't only having one, I also wanted to stay in film. I got work as a grunt work lugging things around set and building/setting up large bits of lighting gear. No clue what I was doing. I started off on big shows like The Flash and Arrow. A friend got me work on a small set, and only 13 days into working as a grip, which I didn't tell them, they made me the key grip. Key is film talk for manager. I was in charge of a whole department which is one half of the lighting team. Faked it until I made it. That's great. You imagine doing it, and you succeeded at it. Honestly, I felt like this for most of my jobs in the industry. I work on Cisco voice systems and it always seemed like I was getting jobs that were just a bit higher technical level than I was at. So I was constantly working hard to learn what I didn't know to get to the level that I was supposed to be at. Or they would have one of the Cisco voice platforms that I wasn't familiar with but expected me to troubleshoot and work on. Such as my current job, which has AX, call center stuff, and I'd never worked on anything but UCCX, which is a very slimmed down version of AX, and is very different. So now I'm working hard to learn AX, but I'm always feeling like at any time they'll realize they can get someone better and replace me. So you're actually working hard and learning a lot to get to a higher level? That's just solid work, man. You're not faking it. That's called making a career. Don't get yourself mixed up in imposter syndrome feelings. I have a GovDit job and I have no college experience. Had never used a Windows computer before I was hired, and didn't know what a server was. I picked it up over the last 4 years. Honestly, I think I have met like 50 versions of people in GovDit. You can blend in with the crowd, but I'm happy you actually made the effort to learn. God bless you for being a pack leader. Currently living in a third world country after being in first world my entire life. I'm 16. Gonna fake that I'm happy here till we make it, fellas. I too was born in the US and still live here. Graduate school, doctoral program. Anyone who has endured this pain understands that the transition from undergraduate to graduate training can be very much intimidating and elicit imposter syndrome. Everyone in my cohort was faking it till making it, but in that process of stress and calms and writing and research and teaching and learning, you eventually make it. But it's a bitch getting there, and every day early on felt pretty fake. Just gotta get your mental health right. Get your physical health right. Get your social support right. Make sure to keep your hobbies up. Try to research something you're marginally actually interested in. Establish good relationships with faculty, your cohort, your PI, etc. Trust in your self-efficacy. Keep grinding, faking it, and doing the best you can until you come out the other side all the wiser for it. The competency and confidence will come, but not without the sacrifice of anxiety and time put in. A lot of people think doctoral programs are about intelligence. Sure, to some extent, but not nearly as much as people think. It's really about persistence, determination, commitment, resilience, and grit. The process will test you and break you, but you will grow, and you can succeed. Came here to say the same thing. The first paper I wrote got accepted to PNAS. I had an imposter syndrome-induced panic attack. Then textbooks started referencing the paper, and the panic came on again. It wasn't until my 5th paper that I actually started to believe my work was important, and I wouldn't be found out as an imposter. Recovering from some mental health issues, I had a really hard time around people, constantly questioning myself and their behavior towards me, but I just forced myself to believe the best and kept pressing on. I found friends that way and great stories. My entire life, I was on the stage for a hypnotist and didn't get hypnotized, but I decided to go along with it. Sounds like you got hypnotized in the sense that you felt pressure to go along with what the hypnotist was asking. Working. I can totally make results, but all the time, while I'm at it, it is a faking in action. I enlisted in the army in my late 20s, and after a couple of deployments to Iraq in my 30s I decided to make the army my career. I wasn't particularly gung-ho. I know that's the Marines, but a lot of people wouldn't get it if I said I wasn't too apt, but I liked being in the army, and I liked the people I worked with, and people liked to work with me. Eventually I got wounded, and it was one of those Forrest Gump type things, where I was discharged, but not really messed up. So here I was in my mid-30s with no real civilian work experience, going out into the real world at the exact same moment that the economy took a nosedive. I ended up using the GI Bill to go to college, and thanks to a couple of semesters of community college I took before enlisting and taking a full load of classes every semester, including a full load in the summers, I managed to get my BS in information science and technology with a minor in business in 3 years. After school I hustled my ass off and took one temp job after another so I could get some experience working in corporate environments. Somehow, and I'm not sure exactly how it went down, I managed to land 1-year contracts with companies that pretty much everyone has heard of. I started out doing basic data entry, which then lead to data analysis, which eventually lead me to my career in payroll processing. All of this from some high school dropout Gen X slacker who spent most of his 20s working dead-end jobs. singing in a punk band, and smoking weed every day. When I went to college after the army I had no idea how to do shit with computers. Like I could surf the internet and play video games, but that was it. And not counting the army, my most impressive job title was assistant third shift stock manager at a grocery store. I managed to fake it until I made it to the point that now companies are calling me to lure me away from my current gig so I can head up their payroll department. Is it fair to refer to yourself as a high school dropout when you went to college and graduated? I always thought I'm a high school dropout and ended up doing X. Implied that was the end of your formal education. Went from hospitality at a casino to an engineer by faking my resume. I had general electrical knowledge, but that's it. Within 6 months got promoted and left to a higher paying job where I constantly feel like the least experienced engineer telling my engineers how to do their job. Granted, I studied ALIT, but my old chief engineer said I was like Leonardo DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can. My coworker has a degree in mechanical engineering in another country, but was lucky to get a job in the US helping to fix the Y2K bug. He was told to search for year codes in software and edit it a certain way. He was so out of his league that when he made a mistake that he couldn't just backspace to fix, he would accidentally turn off the computer to restart it, just because he didn't know how to undo edits. He's now a lead Java developer. I started a business when I was 17. That was 12 years ago, in another city, still going and have progressed and improved. My undergrad major required a senior project. The honors college program I was in also required a senior project, because my major was a pretty common one. The major and the honors college allowed students in my major to combine and do one project instead of two. The project for my major required 400 hours of work/participation with a mentor, and the presentation of the final project. I was also required to present my project in 2 public forums in order to graduate. Not only did I not get the hours needed, but I also just didn't present my project anywhere, because I was split between my major and honors college. I don't think anyone took responsibility for me, and I graduated no problem. Still my best act of mediocrity to date.